Revelation 1424. From the 18th of May 1940. Spiritual connections are dependent on the will of man. It is obvious that spiritual forces can only be active where a direct connection with them is established. The will of both sides must always meet, in this case, the will to give and the will to receive. A gift that is not received can never fulfill its purpose. Spiritual mediations, therefore, which are neither desired nor accepted, cannot penetrate into the heart of a human being and thus remain without effect. Contact must be established, without which the transmission of spiritual power is inconceivable. Since now both the spiritual giving being as well as the earthly being must agree in their will, but the giving being is always ready to hand out spiritual gifts, the imparting of these is therefore only dependent on the will of the earthly being. And again, this will cannot be forced to receive spiritual gifts. And so this is the explanation why so few people are mentally taught by spiritual beings. That the working of the spiritual power emerges so rarely visibly, and that therefore this working is always doubted despite the obvious proof consisting of the fact that man has acquired knowledge without any other aids than the inner connection with a good spiritual power. Only the man who wants to receive can acquire such knowledge, provided that he also fulfills the conditions which result in divine spiritual work. However, the preconditions alone are not sufficient to acquire knowledge, so the will to receive is missing. Because the will first establishes the connection, the will makes the earthly being able to listen to the instructing voice. The will opens the heart, it declares itself ready, and only now the gifts of the Spirit flow to it. Only now the Spirit of God connects in man. The Divine Spirit spark. With spiritually perfect beings. Spirit reaches out to spirit. The spiritual in man seeks to increase itself through the union with the likewise spiritual. Therefore knowledge and cognition will be the result of this union of the spiritual, because the spiritual will try to impart knowledge to the soul. The soul of the one who has formed his will in such a way that he declares himself ready to receive the teachings from above, will recognize its aim in the union with the spiritual, and it will now not oppose the striving of the spirits towards each other by determining the will to listen inwardly. This is by no means a mechanical activity, but the will must again and again give its consent, if the spirit in man wants to unite with the spiritual light and power bearers. A single will is not enough, but every acceptance of spiritual power from the will of man must be striven for, and this again requires power, which man can only request in prayer and which now comes to him in abundance. The prayer for steeling of the will, for strength to fulfill the divine will always be heard, because God himself wants to supply the truth to the people, therefore he will also give every possible help to man, so that he increases in knowledge and the right cognition. No earthly child will need to fear that it is too weak to receive the divine word, for what it lacks will be supplied to it through God's love if it only sincerely asks for it. And likewise the willpower will also be increased if man uses it to do justice to the divine will. Amen.